Great, thank you. So thanks, Rajat, for. Oh, okay. Thanks, Rajat, for getting me in on short notice over here. I just wanted to talk a little bit about FIPS and about the FIPS job that we've been trying to get into Cinder for a while now. As some of you probably already know, we've been trying to get FIPS tested as part of all of the upstream jobs and as part of a community goal that we're hopefully going to select this time around for the Z cycle. And what we're planning on selecting for the Z cycle, hopefully, is getting all of the projects, or at least most of the core projects, having some sort of FIPS job that will be running and voting. There is the link. I have a link there on line 519, which is just basically all of the FIPS jobs everywhere. There's no need to really click through it. But if you're interested, those are all of the jobs that I know of right now that are running under FIPS, and hopefully we're going to continue to add more status of all of those. And then on line 520, we have the current FIPS job, which we've been trying to run on Cinder. Now, when I put together that initial review, things were different. It was on RHEL 8, and what I did is I put a whole bunch of different jobs there. It's the expectation is not that you're going to add. I think there's like 7 or 8 jobs or something like that were added. They added FIPS there. That was more me throwing a bunch out there to see what would work. But the idea then is for you guys to decide which ones we want to keep. If there are things that are testing the same thing, then maybe we certainly don't want to keep those. So most of the projects have about 1 or 2, at most 3 extra jobs that are there that are FIPS jobs. Because certainly we don't, except for OOO, which is going to default to be testing FIPS by default on CentOS 9 and above. Maybe we can take a look at that review. There's a couple of one thing I'd like to try and identify is which jobs we are likely to want to keep, and then to look at a couple of places where we're seeing failures, and hopefully have some guidance over there as to where things are in terms of those failures and whether we think we know what's going on there. So Rajat, if you just want to click onto that review. So that's the one on, yeah. Or do you want me to do it? I can. Oh, you got it. Okay.
I guess it should be visible now.
Yeah, perfect. I think. There you go. Cool. Right. So if we just take a look at that review, you'll notice that we probably can just go down to the last check over there, the last Zool thing, and it will show you the different things that are running, right? So as you can see there, there's a bunch of different things, and I've added a bunch of different things, and the ones that say -FIPS at the end there are the ones that are FIPS jobs. And so if you guys take a look at those, if you can tell me which ones we need and which ones we don't need, we can adjust the patch accordingly. The other thing I want to mention about the patch, and just in terms of stability of the patch, because we have only so far been able to test FIPS using CentOS, and the reason for that is that Ubuntu has said that has a policy whereby turning on FIPS is actually something that requires a subscription. And so that requires an activation key, which means we can't really do things on Ubuntu. However, it will be true in future, and I've been in conversations with Ubuntu about this, but Ubuntu is planning on making available to the foundation a subscription, which would allow the foundation to do FIPS testing. and they're in the process of figuring all that stuff out internally right now. So there will be the possibility of having FIPS jobs on Ubuntu in the future. We have to figure out all those details because they understand that the CI system is essentially a public system, so anyone who downloads an image and goes in as root can find that subscription key. But they're working out the internals to make sure that this is something that is only valid for the foundation, and it's something that they would rotate periodically, and so on and so forth. But in the meantime, until then, we only have CentOS, and so as you may know, CentOS has been changing. CentOS Stream has been changing stuff a lot, and things have been less stable as a result. And so the end result is, we had some jobs, for example, in Glance, we had to move those jobs to experimental and periodic, just because they were breaking. And that's probably what I would suggest that we do here, is that we will put the jobs in, but we'll put them in. We can either put them in as non-voting, or we can put them in as experimental and periodic. And in that case, we will wait and watch them to see whether or not they are stable enough to then pull back into as voting as part of things. So on that note, if we can take a look at the jobs that are there, and I'll let you guys tell me which ones are the ones that we want to keep and which are the ones that we don't.
Well,
please.
I noticed we added a functional FIPS job, and I would be really surprised if that's one that we actually find a lot of value in.
Fair enough.
Do we know any particular reason that we would want that? I kind of don't think we do.
Like I said, all I did was I threw a bunch of tests up there with the idea that you guys would tell me which ones are useful and which ones are not, right? So
I think we probably don't want that unless somebody has a particular case for why it would be useful.
Okay, so I'll drop the functional. Which other ones?
Can we open the review, Rajat? Can or whoever is sharing the screen, can you please open the changes to the Zool YAML file? Because there are a bunch of comments, so we can see exactly the job. So the first one is the functional. We already discussed about that. So then we have a few jobs which are duplicates of jobs we define in that repository. We can see the definitions later. Here is just when we are using them. So Cinder plugins. This is basically the Ceph, the Ceph version of so deploying everything with Ceph. So that's something we probably worth keeping. But I'm just trying my comments. Then please correct me. I'm probably going to be something incorrect. And if we go down, the next one, this is the multi-node active job, which I think it's not very stable in itself, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So maybe it's until it stabilizes, it's not worth adding that. But in case you found that working, maybe we can keep it that. But anyway, so that's like question mark. The next one, Cinder Tempest plugin LVM Leo Barbican. Waiting for Rajat. So this one, as I said, this should be moved into Cinder Tempest plugin because the original job is defined there. So it can be. We probably want to have that so that when we run patches on Cinder Tempest plugin, we run them on with FIPS enabled as well. But the definition should be moved there in any case.
Okay.
Something we already discussed, but just to summarize the status. Tempest integrated storage FIPS. So isn't the definition of this one also in Tempest? Because Tempest integrated storage is defined there, and I guess it's used by other repository, by other projects. I think it's used by all storage projects, so also by Glance and so on. So I guess the
Yes.
definition of that one should be probably there. Then we can decide whether to use it, but that's kind of the baseline.
What is integrated storage mean?
It's basically all the, if I remember correctly, it's the full Tempest jobs, but so originally there was just a big full Tempest job which was running all the tests, but then in order to reduce the load on the gates, the QE team created several Tempest integrated something jobs focusing on specific components. And that's the things I mentioned 2 days ago, I think. This is basically all the tests which affect storage components. So they are skipping most of the neutron tests. I think also keystone tests. So in order to have to not take like two hours, or so that the job doesn't take 2 hours. So there is also Tempest integrated.
But it probably uses LVM. But it probably uses LVM. So So one thing is having the definition, so we can run in some other place, but on Cinder patches, it probably doesn't add anything on top of the LVM FIPS we added earlier with Barbican, right? So you say we move it to the definition there, so we can use it in other places, but probably we don't want to run this one.
Does the Tempest integrated storage job run Barbican?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So probably it's the same as the LVM LIO one, except it doesn't have Barbican and it won't have the Cinder Tempest plugin, right?
It's the other way. So it's the LVM which is like the Tempest integrated storage plus Barbican. But yes, correct.
So which one do we keep and which one do we take out? I guess is my question.
We take out the integrated storage FIPS.
Okay.
Though it may be interesting, like Luigi was saying, to have it defined
in Tempest, for
together
example,
with the parent. Yeah.
So that one, I believe, as Luigi said, is defined in Tempest right now, and that's the one that's actually being run by Nova, if I recall correctly, as part of what they're doing. I'll have to check and see exactly which one it is, but I believe that's the one that is being run there.
Okay. So right now it's defined also here, so that's
sure.
If there is a definition, it's overridden. So
sure, right. But we don't want to run this one anyway, so that's fine.
At least not in Cinder and OSBreak. I don't know if Nova may want to run it or somebody else may want to run it, but doesn't add anything to our current. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the next one is the DevStop plugin NFS. So same as the other one for Ceph, the definition of this one should move to DevStop plugin NFS. Okay. And then we can run that at least. Sorry.
So do we want to test FIPS with NFS? Just conceptually, is that a thing that we would like to do? We didn't really cover the whole goal of all of this yet. So is the goal basically every job that we have that we think is important, we want to duplicate it and have a FIPS version 2?
The goal of this basically is to cover as much functionality as you think is relevant that could be affected by FIPS, right? So what FIPS is going to do is it's going to reduce the ciphers that are available for the system to use, right? And it's going to restrict how those ciphers are going to be used. So if we think that this is something that could be affected by FIPS, then this is something that we probably want to run. Anything that has a lot of encryption or any kind of encryption in there probably ought to be run. Something like that. So if the idea is for you guys to decide which functionality, you want to try and cover as much functionality as you can, but obviously you don't have to cover everything. It's just something that which you think is going to be important.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need to add at least a FIPS job for iSCSI and for Ceph. And for NFS, it'll matter as we close in on NFS encryption as a feature, which we're not quite there, but we're getting pretty close. So we probably need it for that, if nothing else. Fiber channel, I don't know what we have for any of that stuff, but what I'm getting at is we probably need one kind of per major protocol family, if nothing else. So yeah, it would make sense to have one for NFS. I assume that NFS in general will be less interesting than some of the other cases, but it will definitely show up in the encryption feature there.
Okay. So for now, we'll keep the NFS and okay.
Just move it. And do we have anything else? If you go down. Oh, the LVM multi-backend. That's kind of, I'm not sure if from the FIPS point of view has additional value compared to the LVM Leo. This only defines multiple LVM backends, so maybe not sure. No, Dolga says no.
That has some additional tests that test migration or something. Is that right?
I think it also tests migration, but between LVM. So I'm not sure.
Okay, I guess I'm not sure what that really does.
I think it is not multi-node, so it's just multi-backend. And if it's only LVM, probably just does a DD between the paths in the system.
Yeah. So is this a yes or no?
I think it's a no for now.
Yeah, I think FIPS-wise, it's going to basically just be identical to the other LVM jobs.
Okay.
I think that was the last one, but I have another comment on the implementation. Yeah, so maybe some of the other changes are not needed anymore if we're going to remove the functional job, because I think the changes in the bin dep and the changes in the the test repos are related to functional job tests, so that should simplify. Oh, I have another question about these playbooks, which probably needs to be replicated in all places where we have
yes.
So why not try to add this enable FIPS role in all as one of the base roles which are called in the pre-phase for all the jobs in a DevStack phase, for example, but enable it only conditionally with a variable, so that you just need to set the variable instead of having to include the playbook in all repositories and copy the playbooks in all repositories.
Well, we can look into that. I mean, we did look into things like that before. Not everything is running through DevStack, for example, right? So it's not. Yeah, we can talk. Maybe we'll talk on this offline. But we've looked at a bunch of different things, and I'm hesitant to change it now because that's sort of the way we have it everywhere right now. If we did change it, we would want to change it everywhere.
Better now than later.
Well, I mean, it almost if you look over there's a number of places that have it everywhere. It's a rather small playbook, obviously, that has to be there. But we can talk about improving that. So.
Yeah, but a rather small playbook is the same things we had. We had a lot of duplicated scripts in the past. We tried to kill them all. Right. I remember all the things like install VM, things like setup. There were tons. I even forgotten about that. So every time I see something which is duplicated in several places where it shouldn't be, I start to kind of say, no, that's not going to work. And about DevStack, I know everything does. I'm not saying to move the role inside DevStack. I'm saying to just add the call to the role inside DevStack. and all the DevStack jobs, which are a lot here, will benefit from them automatically.
Okay.
Of course, the code as I said, in the role should have a conditional, so that enable the FIPS if a certain variable is set.
Okay.
And that will simplify the addition of future jobs. And I know it may be painful to change the existing changes which have been already committed, but really, for the sake of maintainership, it's definitely better.
Okay. Well, I'll keep that in mind, and we can. I'd rather change it again. I'd rather change it out after this review, so that we would change it everywhere. But we can collaborate about that after this as well too.
Yeah, let's discuss. I can help with that.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely happy to look into that for sure. Okay, great. So I think that helps, and I will make the relevant changes to just pull up those particular jobs. There are a couple of failures that are showing up with these jobs. There were many more, but because of the way that the fixes that have gone in, I believe that there were issues with libvirt and with detaching volumes before they were ready to be detached. And as a result, that ended up with a bunch of different failures. But now a number of things are passing which weren't before. However, there are still a few failures over here. In particular, if we can look at a couple of those. So let's look at the Cinder Tempin LVO plugin. There is one failure there which corresponds to that test, right? The test boot cloned test volume encrypted. It's an encryption thing, so that's where you would expect something to happen. But I was wondering if anyone has had a chance to take a look at this. I know that Alan had told me that there was a patch up there. I think Gorka may have put up a patch in OS Brick that might solve this, but I don't know if this is where that came from.
I think it's different. The one I work on should fix the create volume from image.
Okay.
Where you actually have to decrypt the volume. I think Eric probably can correct me, and Alan if he's around. But I think when we clone the keys, and we don't need to actually decrypt the volume. First, if the backend can efficiently clone, there's nothing. The fix I implemented will do nothing. And even if it's not efficient and we do a DD, it will do nothing as well because we don't actually decrypt. So OS Break will not, could not
So I
affect.
to go look and see what this test is doing exactly. So we had been tracking for some time one particular failure that Gorka was mentioning about creating a volume from an image, creating an encrypted volume. And my understanding was that was the only big failure of interest in this area for LVM with FIPS. So this particular job, I don't know if this is another symptom of the same kind of thing or what, because I don't remember how this test works exactly. But I don't think anybody has been looking at this specific test lately.
Okay.
And I assume this is using blocks and not V1, so it's going directly to the Nova code path, so it would not be affected by the patch just submitted. Definitely, if it's Lux V1.
The other question though is if that run only has that failure, where is the failure that we were also just fixing? Shouldn't that still be there?
Well, since
So
it was a race condition, they have been lucky, I guess.
I think it was failing most of the time on that job, but yeah, it's possible.
there were some jobs that were failing, and there were recent changes again with the detaching of volumes, and changing tempers so that the volumes would only be attached once they were SSH, once it was the VM itself was SSHable. And that seems to have fixed a number of places where we've been running into some sort of race condition where something could happen. At least that's what fixed things on the Nova side of things. And I also noticed at the same time it fixed a bunch of the errors that were coming in here as well too. So that might be the reason as well that we're not seeing, if this is a timing thing, that you're not seeing this failure as well too. But I think this has run a couple of times, and at this point, this is the only test that is failing under FIPS here. Consistently, that is.
But yeah, I see, depending on where it is failing, if it's failing in line 138, then it's probably fixed by the patch I submitted. Because we are creating the volume created in the method in line 135. We create a volume from image. So it's basically the create volume from image issue that we fixed in Cinder, because that operation is going to happen in Cinder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This should be fixed. And the problem probably happens when it tries to boot the instance, because it cannot decrypt, because it has been incorrectly written by Cinder.
Well, I was just looking at the log. I think the failure you see is that it tries to boot it up and then it fails to ever SSH into it. So that would make sense.
Yep. So Alan's suggestion is probably right. My patch is likely to fix this one.
Okay, great. Is there any way to test this, or do we just have to wait till the patch merges? Because I mentioned putting your patch as a depends on, but Alan said that probably won't work because it won't pick up the change because it's not. It picks up whatever OS brick is inside the image or something like that. At least that's what Alan said.
Maybe because OS brick is a library.
Well, we've had issues with our jobs where some of the jobs will install OS brick from Git, and a lot of them install it from pip. And the ones that install OS brick from pip, you can't do that on.
But it's easy to fix. You just need to have the OS brick in the
section.
Project section.
Yeah, what we need to do is go evaluate what we actually what we actually want those jobs to do, I think.
But yeah, so
is my microphone working?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just had to make a change. Blue Jeans keeps forgetting my settings. Sorry. So yeah, if there is a way to get OS brick changes pulled in on this patch, then that would be great. There is a way that we can get some advanced testing done. Some of the folks in this session know that we've got an upstream CI node being held, and we could just download your patch, Gorka, and install it on that local machine.
Well, I think we could just submit an OS brick patch that has a depends on, right?
Or you can just change or you can add the do not merge patch in Cinder itself with on top of the patch that Gorka sent, which depends also on or the other way. Anyway, you need to stack a few patches, but that's doable. Or you can change the do not merge patch with FIPS to also specify that required OS brick in the required projects, and that should do it.
Yeah, I'm just offering a way to test the patch without making more patches.
Yeah, but I think we also go back to what Eric was saying. Maybe it would be good to look at what we want to test, and maybe in one of the FIPS jobs, we actually want to test the current OS brick, not the latest release.
Yeah, we've gotten
that job
over the years by doing this, where we have a bug in Brick and we don't realize it till right after we release it, and then everything breaks. And I think a couple years ago, I think we maybe tuned some jobs a little bit, but I don't know what jobs we have that run OS Brick Git Master right now.
In the
There's
OS
nothing.
Brick, I know that in the OS Brick repository, there is the same LVM Leo Barbican job, which is run against the master of OS Brick.
Yeah, but we needed one in the Cinder repository for that. That's what always bit us in the past, was you have new things land in Brick and they don't get tested in Cinder until Brick is released.
But anyway, that's a separate discussion than the just as dispatch on there.
I think it's a discussion worth having if we want to figure out how we're going to actually make sure that we test this stuff over time.
So I guess for the purpose of testing with right now, at least for testing whether Gorka's patch is going to work, maybe Luigi, I can talk to you a little bit, and we can figure out how to stack the patches, or we can go with Alan's suggestion, and just do it on the node.
Easy to modify your patch, the current FIPS job, and add the project OS Break, and then you can add the depends on the OS Break patch.
Okay, got it.
Which I think is what Luigi was suggesting, that once you tell it, use the source code instead of the pip package, you can make it actual dependencies.
Okay, cool. I will do that, and then I will check with Luigi just to make sure I've done it right, and then we'll go from there, and hopefully that'll pull that in. Right. Cool.
So
all right. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
On some other jobs there, I mean, I looked at the NFS one, and it's failing with some kind of really basic, just building the Python environment and installing pip. Do we know?
Yeah, that's a weird one. I don't quite have seen that happen before, but I've seen it happen periodically, and I'll have to run it again. It is a weird thing that shows up periodically on the CentOS 9 jobs. I don't quite understand what happens there, but it's trying to find it's sporadic, and so it tries to. It's not failing to find pip. It's actually failing to find some other library like liberasia code or something like that. And sometimes it finds it, and sometimes it doesn't. And the end result is that the yum update that happens fails to happen. And so when it continues on, it thinks it can't find pip later. This happens periodically, and I don't know why. It's happening a little less often now, but I chalk that up to CentOS 9 weirdness. That happens. So if it happens periodically, then if it happens consistently, we'll have to check and see if there's something about that job that's causing it to happen consistently. The other failure that I noticed over there is in the Ceph setup, and the Ceph setup one I understand to be the case because in CentOS 9 we're trying to use Ceph admin to set things up, but the work that is needed to be done to get that going is not complete yet, or I don't know. Maybe you guys can tell me there. There's a link there on line 517 that shows the Ceph setup bug that's there.
Let's see. Oh, I have lost my line numbers in Etherpad. So, do we think on CentOS 9 we require the Ceph ADM stuff?
That was at least what I thought was happened, because I looked over there and it's failing in a situation where it tries to set Ceph up, and it's failing because it's it goes to a conditional that has, CentOS 8, blah, blah, blah. And when I asked the Ceph guys, well, should I just add CentOS 9 in there? And they said, no, because it's not, we're doing Ceph admin instead for this version of Ceph.
There is a back plugin Ceph patch in progress to use Ceph
Right.
ADM installation. I don't know if that's a requirement for CentOS 9 or if it's just the way that everyone wants to go. But I guess one thing to do might be to just try running this with that DevStack plugin Ceph patch and see what happens. Because I think it's up and running enough to generally work. I'm not sure if it's done, but I think it's mostly up and running.
Do you happen to have that patch handy?
Yeah.
You need also to, apart from depending on the patch, you also need to set some variables to actually enable the patch, because the default behavior is to use the old deployment method. And also, yeah, that's the way they want to go on the Ceph side, because that's now the official way Ceph provides to deploy, which wasn't the case before. And DevStack had this, DevStack plugin Ceph has had this hard-coded and custom-made way of setting up Ceph. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Luigi, maybe I will talk to you after this about what variables need to be added over there as well too. Then
I need to find the patch.
Yeah. So perfect. Cool. Well, that covers everything I wanted to cover in terms of of these jobs, at least. Hopefully that'll move us further, and things will look great. But I'll make all of the relevant changes that we talked about here, and remove the jobs that we don't need, and so on, and then make this more consistent. And so the last thing I just wanted to talk about, was I have been dutifully ignoring all of the third-party jobs. I don't know if anyone is paying attention to them other than possibly the third-party people, but of course we want to encourage folks in the third-party jobs to be testing using FIPS as well too. I don't know what the best mechanism for that is. I know that one of the things we did on the downstream side is we sent out emails to all of the partners, Red Hat partners, and said, hey, if you have third-party jobs, you should probably be testing FIPS. But
I don't know that a whole lot of our third-party CIs run on CentOS, so that might be quite a big stumbling block on that part.
Got it. Right. So maybe in that case, what we will basically try to push it a little further when we have the Ubuntu nodes in order to do that. So, okay.
Okay, if that was all for the discussion.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. This has been very helpful.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi, for bringing up this topic.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Have a nice one.
You too.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with the next topic. We still have a lot of time to meet with Nova, so we will try to cover as much topics as we can. Maybe the Nova topic will take much more time. So next topic is by Eric, implement a force delete from DB command. Eric.
Well, I should have renamed the topic, but yeah, let me kind of share what the idea is. And I've got two ideas here, and I wanted to kind of see what people think about this as a design. So we've got some customer requests. I think we've seen some of these for a while, but the scenario that customers find themselves in, especially in deployments, I think that are spread, geographically or stretched over multiple sites. They take storage offline at a site and they end up with Cinder volumes that they wanted to throw away, and they've taken their storage offline and now they can't delete them because the Cinder volume driver can't talk to the backend anymore. And so what they initially proposed, and there was a work in progress patch up from a few years ago that mostly gets there for this. I'll find a link to it in a little bit. But the initial proposal was that they wanted to add a Cinder manage command that would basically, Cinder manage, I want to delete this volume from the database, even though the backend is gone. And it would just go in and remove the entries from the database. That generally works. And we probably would have merged that 2 years ago or whenever, but I think the person writing it didn't really want to finish up the whole thing, and nobody else was super interested. So I think it got abandoned and just kind of left hanging there. But I was looking at that in this request, and I'm not a huge fan of adding more Cinder manage commands because it's hard to use them on a deployment because you have to get onto a node where you can actually run them. They don't get tested very well because it's not an API kind of test, and you have to script up some kind of other type of test system to test a Cinder manage command to do such a thing. It's kind of a pain to maintain it because nobody's really looking in there to update how we have to delete volumes in the Cinder manage code. And I'm kind of happier that it's not there because it's just kind of a hassle to maintain code to do this in Cinder manage. So what I was thinking about instead was to add an API flag to the unmanaged volume and unmanaged snapshot operation, which would allow those to succeed when you can't talk to the volume driver, talk to the backend, because the unmanaged operation basically does the same thing as this. It removes the volume from the Cinder database and clears the quota and that kind of thing, but it doesn't actually remove it from the backend, which is actually basically what you want in this situation. And the advantage of doing that is that it's just another operation on our API, and it shares the code with unmanaged that we use currently, and we could write tests for it and all that. So I mostly wanted to see if people thought that made sense, if there was any objection to adding this as a function to our unmanaged calls. We'd have to mostly cover volumes and snapshots. It gets a little more questionable from the API point of view if you have volumes that are in groups and that kind of thing. But I think volumes and snapshots were kind of my initial thinking for what I would target with this. So the main question is that reasonable? I mean, is it worth writing up a spec describing how this would work via the unmanaged API? And do people think that's an idea that sounds sensible, or is this terrible sounding, or what?
I like it better than the Cinder manage command, to tell you the truth, because like you say, it's going to be easier for people to realize that it actually exists. It's going to be easier to test. The problem I see is that from a user perspective, I don't know if it's too inconvenient for the problem at hand to have to list all the resources and go one by one doing a manage, instead of having a single operation where you say everything from this backend, the backend doesn't exist, so you might as well manage everything or delete it or whatever. From a user perspective, I don't know how many resources they may have that they want to do this. So
that's true. And I mean, I was thinking about this mostly from the how can I do this with a very small amount of code point of view. That does make a lot of sense for the use case that they might want something that just says eliminate everything from this backend.
But that's an alternative. We do the feature that the customer wants in Cinder client, which is a loop. But the problem is that customers cannot see the backend. The Cinder client, if you're not an admin, you cannot see the pool.
Right.
The backend. And so, but I assume this is something that actually an admin is the one doing it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the use case is a admin deployer kind of use case of we've unplugged our storage and we're trying to clean up afterwards. It's not a end user kind of situation, really.
So it could be possible for the Cinder client to actually know the host of the different resources and actually list them and make a manage command like you described for each one of them. So it can be a second step. First step is just to be able to do it, even if it's a bit inconvenient, and then add that feature to the Cinder client, and then maybe a higher level operation, which is the one that they would usually consume.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the idea of adding this the way I described it, because it's what people do now is they have to go run MySQL Cinder and go delete whatever from volumes, and it's a nightmare because they don't have a tool that actually can do this. So this is really addressing the give them something to do this that's at least not going to be a disaster when they make a typo and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like that in a way like you described. It makes sense. It's a manage. It's just manage because I don't have access. It's just a small difference. I kind of think it's okay, the approach you're suggesting for manage. I like it better than the Cinder manage command.
Yeah, the fact that it's done through the API, you don't have to be on the node. Containers throw yet another wrinkle because the Cinder manage command is only available inside the container. I think there's a lot of upsides to this approach, Eric. So +1 from me.
Yeah, and we can restrict it to make sure that if there's any traps they fall into, we can protect against it and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I'll write up a spec. I mean, the general concept is to be able to run unmanaged, but have it still be useful whenever it would fail on calls that go to the back end. So I'll pick apart kind of what that actually looks like and write up a spec on it.
I assume this would be an extra argument, right? Not do it automatically if the backend doesn't respond.
Yeah.
Would it be -- force?
I didn't want
your favorite.
Yeah. So I don't have a whole lot else on this because I haven't started hacking on this yet, but I'm sure as I prototype it and write a spec, I'll come up with a few more details, but it seems fairly straightforward.
Okay. I guess everyone is in agreement that this sounds like a good approach and we can jot down the details in the spec. We have this add an action item. Okay, any other discussion points for this topic, or should we move on? Okay, I guess we can move on. I'm not able to see anyone, so I'm not sure if people are nodding their heads.
Yep, we noted. We can continue.
Okay. So next topic is by Gorka, reporting of storage protocol. Gorka, do you want to discuss this one or the NVMe one? Like whichever you feel like.
This one is probably easier. So, but let me give a bit of context and background for those that are not aware. Well, I found this while working on some NVMe stuff, and I realized that, well, in Cinder, we have two things. We have a thing called storage underscore protocol, which is a key that is returned by backends, the scheduler, when they report their stats and their capabilities and everything. Then we have a different thing, which is driver underscore volume underscore type. Those are related, but different in value. They can be different in value. They don't have to be the exact same thing. And the driver volume type goes into the connection information that is returned by the driver when you call initialize connection. So they are slightly different because this second one is used by the code. So it is used as an identifier of the connector for the OS brick connector factory. So that name is always right. If you have a backend that works, that's always right because otherwise it couldn't work. And we have aliases in OS brick and everything. Fine. The other value, the storage protocol, is mainly used is mostly user facing because those are the ones that see it, and then they can use it in their volume type extra specs, so they can tie or link a volume type to a specific protocol. So the thing is that we have a couple of them that are using different values to report the same storage protocol. I've only found two, NFS and NVMe-oF, which is how I found it, the easiest. So for NVMe-oF, we have three different values returned by drivers, which in my opinion, it's kind of weird. It's the same storage protocol, so why do we call it different things? And then NFS, well, that's not a big deal. I mean, when you read it, okay, one uppercase, one lowercase, not a big deal. But still, if you are writing an extra spec, you have two backends that are NFS. You want to send it to one or the other. You end up having to write a more complex extra spec because you have to say uppercase or lowercase. It can be one or the other. So, and like I say, for NVMe-oF, it's even worse. We have three weird ones. Well, a normal one and two a bit more weird. So in my mind, they should all be the same. We should make it so that the scheduler does not differentiate between them. The approach I'm taking in the proposed patch is basically to be backward compatible by returning both values, both the one that is wrong and the one that is right, so that the scheduler is able to work fine. The downside to this backward compatible way is that as a user, if I get the list of pools so that I can see the backends and information from them, I will see now, instead of a string, a list. Here's a question. If somebody wants to ask it out loud, they can. An action.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. That was me.
Yeah. Ask. No, ask it. Wait, please.
I just was. I thought maybe I missed it or something. But like, suppose you have that unification among and basically made it all consistent. When would an administrator want to take an action upon using this capability? Like, for example, you want to do something that applies to all backends of the same type or volumes on the same type of connection. Like, okay, everything that's NFS on my host, I want to do something. Like, what is that?
that's not the, so this field, the storage protocol, is returned by the drivers to the scheduler, and it's only used by the scheduler for scheduling operations. So the way we tie that value with the backends is, for example, when you create a volume, you specify a volume type, and in the volume type you would say this type is for NFS, or this type is for fiber channel. Any backend that I have in my system that has fiber channel is acceptable. So for example, I say create a volume, but I want to be the volume type is fiber channel. So the type is specified.
That is my answer. Yeah, the operation you're trying to apply is create a volume. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
So if I want to use NFS and I have two different backends, one with uppercase, one with lowercase, I can just say storage protocol is NFS lowercase because it will only go to some of them. The one that use uppercase will not be eligible. So then I would have to say, okay, since I wanted to go there, my extra spec has to be a little bit more complex. Or storage protocol is lowercase NFS, comma, and then the other option with the other case. Yeah. So I think it's from my user perspective, it's not that great to see it in different ways, and it's worse that you cannot use it effectively.
So I have a counter proposal, maybe for another way to accomplish the same thing. I'll see what you think. This seems very strange from like a driver API point of view, this tuple thing, because it's just confusing and weird, honestly, for a driver developer.
Mm-hmm.
So my initial inclination would be to just leave the drivers as they are for the first step and put in the filter scheduler that actually looks at this stuff a map that says that NFS and capital NFS are the same thing, and that all of the what's that?
That doesn't help me with a follow-up patch, because I found this problem when the manager, that for iSCSI we say whether they share targets or not, backend, based on the iSCSI protocol. We say if iSCSI protocol and doesn't say that it doesn't share targets, I assume that it's sharing. Well, the NVMe-oF has the exact same problem. We are sharing, in the case of NVMe-oF, they don't call it targets, they call it subsystem, but it's the same idea. So if we do that, we solve half of my problem, which is the user facing and the volume types. The problem, then I would have to check 3 different values. It's not the end of the world, truth be told.
Oh.
Because,
so if we put that in the filtered scheduler and wherever else we need it, apparently, the drivers look cleaner. We could take the next step of probably just enumerating a list of protocols in Cinder or Brick somewhere and having all the drivers report one from a list instead of, reporting whatever string somebody wrote in there, which we could check against and make sure that people aren't just making up new things all the time. I kind of got what you were saying about why that's complex, but I'm not sure I followed it enough to
not complex. It's dirty. Let me put it this way. I prefer, if somebody has done something wrong, to dirty their driver than to dirty the Cinder manage code, which is already complex enough.
Yeah, but I think this dirties up the drivers, like the NFS stuff that didn't do it wrong too.
Well, somebody reported NFS. Yep.
Gurka, did you think about just going into all the drivers in the tree and unifying all this driver volume type, just forcefully change it in one review?
Yeah, but
and then people would cargo cult it. When they write new backends, they basically copy everything. If they're all the same, they will see what to copy, right?
yeah. So I added it in my patch. I added to the drivers documentation explanation saying, hey, you have to do it. These are your options. Don't just write whatever you want, so that they, when they implement a new one, they don't make the mistake. The problem with changing existing ones is that I don't know if I'm going to break somebody's deployment. Because if they are using the lowercase or the a different case, I don't know if I'm going to break them. So we could do a mix. No, probably not. I was going to say a mix of Eric's suggestion and your suggestion. Return something different on the scheduler.
Well, yeah. If you translate what the drivers are returning and unify what the drivers give you at the point that we get it from the drivers, then you can handle that kind of thing there too. I don't know. I'll just say again that I think the business of having drivers return tuples is kind of complicated and weird, and seems messier than necessary. But I don't really love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that's a pity.
I'm gonna take a look at that patch, see what you're up to, because I started speaking without actually looking at the code, so I don't know what's going on. Sorry. I'll do it first, and then we'll see.
So does this actually work, returning tuples now without changing the schedule?
It's always been worked, yes. And if you look at the documentation doc file, you will see that Ryan is calling out something that it makes it even a little bit harder to read, because the scheduler code checks against a specific object type, which is list, but the Cinder volume is returning a tuple. So he asked me how come that this works, and it's because the serializer in Oslo does not handle tuples, so that it converts them to list. So in any case, it would not be a tuple, it would be a list. But yes, it is properly handled by the scheduler.
I guess I didn't realize that was a feature that we already had.
Yep, it is. But that doesn't, the fact that we have the feature is irrelevant regarding your opinion of, yeah, this doesn't look good as a driver developer. I think I tried to add a comment in the drivers that I'm modifying so that it's clear why it is returning a tuple, which will be a list. But and the reason to do that is, like Pete was saying, if somebody goes and looks at that, it's important as a reference other drivers that don't confuse people.
If you want it to happen, if you want the right thing to happen when people look at the drivers, you need to just put this in code somewhere and let people report protocol.nfs instead of a string, because then it's actually in the code.
Sounds good. I can do that. I can. We have a constants file or something like that, and that definitely makes it easier for everybody to know that they must return a constant and know whatever string they want. Sounds good.
Yeah, Big fan of that. Quite a while back, I was looking at some of the capabilities code, and I was just stunned to see that a lot of drivers were reporting strings in fields that were, almost accidentally the same driver to driver, but there was no planned consistency. You could just put in whatever string you wanted to in certain fields.
Okay, so one side, regardless of the tuple or list returning, we want to go and change it so that drivers use an actual constant instead of whatever they want, which is a good idea. Another problem is that this looks weird and Eric doesn't like it.
Well, now I got to go look through everywhere we look at storage protocol fields in Cinder and figure out if this breaks something that we haven't thought of too.
As far as I know, we only use it in two places, a scheduler, and only if you put it there. In the Cinder manage command, when we add, not Cinder manage. Cinder
well, people
manager.
It will also break. I believe that people who use the goodness functions and stuff could get broken by this change as well. Because if they've written a function for the scheduler goodness function kind of thing that looks at the storage protocol field, it's probably going to explode when we report a tuple when it was previously a string. And I think that's a thing that some people have actually done. Because they're not going to have written their function expecting it to have a tuple. I don't even know if you can write a function that would parse a tuple in that system. But they would probably thought of that before.
Yep, definitely that would be a problem. Though there is no implicit, we never specified what would be there in the storage protocol. We don't say it anywhere but still, we cannot break them. So, okay. So the alternative, there are two areas. One is the manager for the shared targets that would just need to take into account the other options, the other NVMe-oF weird ones, and then on the scheduler to fix the user-facing thingy, what should we do? Because that one is harder because you don't know the extra specs, what they are going to do. Should we convert it, the stats in there? No, that wouldn't work. I don't see how this would fix how to make the scheduler work with this, truthfully.
How to make what work exactly?
The scheduler. That you're able to use the one that we agree upon, the storage protocol name in the scheduler, regardless of what the backend is reporting. So let's say that the backend is reporting NVMe-oF altogether, like that. But we agree that the right name for storage protocols should be like the official documentation of NVMe-oF writes it with uppercase, lowercase, a dash, whatever. How can we make the scheduler do that right? I don't quite see how we could make it. Without also breaking the anything else.
So is it, I'm trying to think of where this shows up in the scheduler. So it's in the filter scheduler, and you've got a volume type that has a storage protocol in it, right?
Yep, in the extra specs. And I think that goes into capabilities, right? The comparison of the extra specs.
Yeah, so basically, wherever we're doing matching on the capabilities, we have to add a bunch of logic that says map, this string to these potential strings. And I don't remember that code off the top of my head, but I was looking around trying to find it. It's going to be a ball of weird code shoved in there somewhere to do it for sure.
And do we prefer that to the drivers that are returning something different to return a list?
Well, I would prefer it because it keeps it makes it more of an internal Cinder thing, and then the interface for the drivers stays simpler, which I think is a win because we don't have to push the weird kind of thinking through all of this off to the driver developers in that case.
Okay. Then I will go into the drivers that are reporting it wrong and added a comment saying, don't do this. If you're a new driver developer, use the constant that we have defined. That is right. Because like Pete said, people go and look at what exists. So, yeah. Okay, I will add the comments so that people don't use the wrong one as reference, because those will have to return a string. And the other ones will use the new constants, and I will add the weird logic in other places outside of the drivers. Well, this meeting
so if you take
didn't go as well as I thought in the meeting.
So if you take a string out of a driver that should be returning a constant, then that string, assuming it doesn't match the constant, can be added to this mapping thing that, Eric, you talked about in the scheduler?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't follow that one.
So what I heard was that there was a concern that people may have written scheduler rules based on weird strings that their particular driver of interest is returning. And I think what Eric talked about was some mapping code where in the scheduler, if you don't get one of the constant values, look in your mapping table because somebody may have been using one of the weird strings instead. So Gorka, as you find weird strings in the drivers, that concede this mapping table.
Yeah, there might be, as far as I saw, the storage protocols, these are the only two protocols that are, let's call it, weird.
Actually, I think I found
Fiber Channel.
I think I found that Fiber Channel is also not done right when searching around right now. There's FC and there's some that have Fiber_channel.
Ah, come on. They're killing me. Okay. Thank you, Eric. Okay, then I'll have to add that one to the mapping as well. Yes. And so the idea would be that this could be added to the specific filter and not done at a higher level where we change information that we store about the packet. So get pools will still return the same value, which is a string. The goodness function which is a different filter, would not use the mapping because then we would be breaking their goodness filter. So basically, we would only fix the capabilities one. So we don't fix everything really, because Well, I'm inclined to say, I'm sorry, we will that everything that you get from the scheduler will return the new value even. So if you do a get pools, you get the right value. You no longer get fiber underscore channel. You get FC. If you do a get pools.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So basically, the drivers report the right thing, and we do some weird stuff in some mappings in the specific areas. Okay, I will change it. Thank you for the feedback, and thank you, Eric, for reminding me that there's such thing as a goodness function. That, yep.
It's a really important thing for the 2 customers that use it.
Yeah, I know. Whenever they raise a bug, it's like, my God, I forgot that existed. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is good. I mean, I'll happily review it when you rewrite the whole thing. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so Gorka, I've noted down action item. Like I think the mapping logic that we discussed, you're going to update for the capabilities and not for other places that may break existing deployments.
And also, I will be adding the constants while I'm doing it. And yeah.
Yes. So one point on the constants thing. Should that live in Brick or in Cinder? I have an inclination that it should maybe just be in Brick, but I don't know.
But that's the thing, that there are 2 different things. A storage protocol in the volume type,
because this is
things.
That's true, because this is all about internal Cinder weirdness. So yeah, that makes sense.
But at some point I started writing it in OSRig. That's why I know that, no, because I also wanted to do it that way. It made sense to me. But what I can do is for the driver volume type to also have constants, and those would be in OSBreak, so that people don't have to return just a string. Yep, that can be an OSBreak patch. Yep, we'll work on that.
Okay, I think the action item sounds good. And you can update like if I missed out any detail in the topic. And we still have a lot of time, so I guess we can discuss one more topic. Would people like to discuss the CI undeleted Tempest artifacts? Because Simon is not here, so if you want, we can discuss that.
I think it will depend if we have somebody that actually runs a CI, because the information we have, I don't run a CI, I cannot. I just know that it has happened to me. A couple of volumes are left behind, but I didn't know about the comments that Luigi added here of the tools to do cleanup, so I was running it manually, so maybe that fixes it directly. So if we have a vendor that actually knows about this, about their CI.
Looking at the list of participants, I don't think we have anyone, but if there is a vendor, then they can.
I think NetApp people are still in the Manila session.
Okay, so I guess that won't be helpful. And I'm not sure about Goka, your NVMe topic. Maybe it will take a lot of time.
Well, it depends on if somebody else is going to discuss. I mean, I'm going to report a bit the current status, what's broken, how I'm trying to fix things, how I'm trying to consolidate, but I don't think there's going to be, maybe some clarification, but I don't think it's going to be much discussion. The previous topic when somebody says, oh, we should not do that, or that's not nice, or you're breaking this other thing.
Okay, I was just looking
because,
at, yeah.
Yeah, we can probably go with that. And I see that, I think it was Bartos that wanted to be here for the discussion. It's already here. In case he's not paying attention, I'm going to ping him on IRC. But
Okay, so let's discuss that then. I was just going through the content and I thought it will be a long topic, but if you say so, then we can discuss that.
Yeah, but the content is just so that you don't have to write notes and that I don't forget things.
Okay, yeah, thanks for making my work easier then.
Yeah, and I tend to forget things, so yeah. Then I start talking and they half of it. Okay.
Okay, I will just ping Bartos
Okay.
on IRC.
Because to make sure that even if he has already joined, he knows that we are going to start. Hey.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Great. Nice to meet you guys. So I'm Bartosz Abiega. I'm from OVH Cloud, and I got a few questions about NVMe over Fabrics connector on the brick side. Gorka has already answered some of my questions, but I will be glad to hear him, and I will be glad to maybe ask some questions because some things are still not clear for me.
All right. Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Gladly answer.
Yeah, and one more thing. Yeah. I might be able to get involved into the upstream development of the NVMe code. I'm not sure how much time I will have for that, but I hope I will have it.
Oh, that's great. And even
awesome.
if you don't have that much time to write code, if you test the code, that's still a lot of help. Perhaps another payroll files, looking at the code, testing it, running it, and seeing where it breaks, how it breaks. That's always great.
I'll be happy to do it. So.
Yep. Okay. So this whole NVMe topic, I call it efforts instead of issues or problems or things like that, because at the end I will also mention that there is a review for the multipathing that we should be looking at. So I want to finish my data stack patch for LVM with NVMe, and I started discovering that suddenly things didn't work as they should. Suddenly you disconnected a volume, so I connect an NVMe volume, disconnected, try to connect it again, and nope, you cannot connect that volume. I started digging into that problem, and that came from the fact that at some point we removed the NVMe phase disconnect call from the USB connector. That probably was removed because somebody is using shared subsystem. Here, for clarification of those who know ASCSI, subsystem in NVMe is the same as a target, exactly the same, and a namespace is a LAN. That's it. So you have in ASCSI a target which can have multiple LANs. In NVMe, you have a subsystem that can have multiple namespaces, or just one. So I realized that whoever removed that code probably just was using a shared subsystem. So by disconnecting, if they attached 3 volumes and disconnected one, they were breaking the other 2. But they didn't realize that by not disconnecting, they were breaking the drivers that don't share. Why? Because when you don't disconnect and leave it there, but tell Cinder to disconnect it, basically to unmap it, the drivers usually go and destroy the subsystem without telling the Nova system, let's say. So Nova, the Linux NVMe driver, keeps trying to connect. Oh, I've lost that subsystem. Let me try to reconnect. Let me try to reconnect. And during 10 minutes or so, it's trying. And while it's trying, if you try a different connection, now it tries to connect, it raises an error, and we used to capture that error. But guess what? The NVMe client has changed the error code that they return, so SBRIC is no longer able to detect that that failure is specific to the case where it's already connected. So everything fails, and it doesn't reconnect. Basically, I found that that was broken. I also found that encryption didn't work for NVMe unless you were using LuxV1, which goes through Nova, and that works. We also had problems if you suddenly lost your connection to your array for 10 minutes, or your volumes from NVMe would disappear. Just like that, the system would decide that it didn't care about your unbuffered data, it didn't care if you were able to recover it after a while, they would just make the devices disappear. That's yet another problem. In-use-of extend volumes was broken, and well, basically I started finding problems after problems after problems. So my idea in OSBRIC is to first join the different code paths that we have, because I don't know if people remember when Kioxia introduced their connection, their new format for the NVMe-oF connection information, they originally broke the old code paths, and then we realized that it was broken and immediately did a quick if it's the new connector, do the new code path. If it's the old one, do the old code path. That means that right now we have kind of 4 different things that can happen in there. You can have the old format, you can have the new format for a single connection, the new format for a RAID system that has only one device, and the new format for a RAID system that has multiple devices. And the code, OSBRIC goes through different code paths. So we end up with different bugs depending on which path you're taking, which results that you fix a bug in a code path, but suddenly somebody will file a bug with the same problem on a different code path. So one of my patches, what does is basically convert any connection information for NVMe of the old format to the new format, so that from then onwards, inside OSBRIC, everything, at least that code path is common with another of the code paths. That's one of the, probably the biggest patch I have, is just to join both. And why is it so big if I'm just joining? Because when joining, if I just did that change and let the code go through the new code path, it wouldn't work. And it would introduce bugs that didn't exist in the old code path. So basically it's joining everything and removing the bugs of taking the best of each of the code paths, so that we remove a bunch of bugs that only existed in one of them. That is a big part of it, and others are just fixing the disconnect so that the disconnect now will be smart. It will be able to say, okay, you tell me to disconnect. What is this the last namespace? If this is the last namespace that I have on this subsystem, I can disconnect from NVMe and do the proper cleanup. If I have more NVMe device namespaces here, so more volumes, I cannot disconnect. I will leave the subsystem alone. That is another of the patches. That way it can support both single namespace and shared namespace. Then one of the problems that we had why the disconnect issue happened is that we don't have CI. By CI, I mean a standard CI. We have vendor-specific CIs. We don't really know right now what they are testing. And we are sometimes lazy and don't look at what code paths they run and the results. So we should be able to test all the code paths with open source backends, namely LVM with NVMe-T. But today, the NVMe-T driver only uses non-shared subsystems and non-shared and all connection information. So I have a couple of patches to add new features to the NVMe-T target in Cinder so that anybody developing things can actually go and debug OS break code live, not just reading code and imagining how things work. This way, there is one patch that allows the LVM driver to return all connection information or new connection information, and another patch that allows the NVMe-T driver from doing shared and doing non-shared. That way we can do 4 combinations. All shared, all single, new shared, new single. And this also is using the new connection information is kind of important as well, because the new multipathing, it's only going to be supported on the new connection information, not the old one. So if we don't allow the NVMe-T driver target from supporting the new connection, then we will not be able to test multipathing either with LVM. And will be yet another code path that we are not able to test ourselves or run CI. So with all this, we'll be able as developers to test the different code paths with LVM, with NVMe-T, and we'll also be able to add CI jobs to whichever combination we think is best. And I don't know which one is best. In my opinion, it's probably the new connection information together whenever it's possible with multipathing, and then shared, non-shared. I don't know which one is better. Probably the shared is more problematic, so we should probably have it with that one. It's more problematic because there are potential race conditions. Why? Because unlike iSCSI, where I went in the Open iSCSI code and I added a feature to specifically disable automatic scans, in NVMe, everything is automatic. So we cannot disable them when connecting, and the scans cannot be targeted. In iSCSI, you can do a scan and say, scan this target, but only look for LAN number 3. I don't care if there are 20 more LANs that I don't know about. I'm only looking for LAN number 3. By doing that, you're able to connect and disconnect faster because a disconnect will not reappear on a connected scan. So that is easier. But with here, it's trickier, the race condition. So I think probably the best CI is new connection with share. What else? Oh, the new effort. Yeah. So all the code, the patches that I have written, I will have to rewrite them because they are not on top of the multipathing code that exists and that we should be looking into. There is a patch for, I don't have it at hand, but there is a patch that adds native NVMe-oF multipathing. It's not a very complicated one because since it doesn't use the device mapper, it uses the native one. It is really not a lot of code because everything is handled automatically, basically from the NVMe Linux driver. You just have to be able to get the right device. And I think we should review that code. I will try to write the Cinder NVMe code to support multipathing so that it's easier for people to test it. But anyway, that's basically all. I forgot to say. Yeah, the Cinder side of NVMe, it's kind of broken as well. In a way, for example, every time if you have 20 volumes attached to a Nova host, every time you connect a new host, to break all the connections for 10 or 15 seconds. And that's not nice. Whether you attach or detach, that's what happens. All the subsystems get broken and they need to reconnect. They get broken because the NVMe client that exists, the only way you have to do certain things is to add a JSON and say load this JSON. But instead of doing a comparison between what you want to add and what it has, instead of doing that, what it does is breaks everything that exists and puts your new configuration in place. That means that for a moment, when you clear what you have, the connection on the Nova side gets broken. And when NVMe restores the new thing, then now the subsystem are again there and Nova can connect. The only way to work around this, there are two ways to work around this. Go to the NVMe Python package and add functionality, or go in the Cinder code, and instead of using a command line code, use the library functionality that package provides, because it has two functionalities. It is a command line interface, but it's also a Python library. And by using the Python library, we have a lot more functionality. And not only that, but it's going to be faster because we can make the calls to the functions that are read-only operations and don't require privilege escalation. We can do it directly in Cinder. For example, to look for a subsystem, that is not a privilege operation. But the NVMe command is privilege command, so you can only run it if you have your root. So, not great. So, by doing it using the library, we can run pieces of code without privilege, and the ones that need to be privileged, they can use privsep, which is faster than forking and creating another process to run the command and everything. So, yeah, I had forgotten the Cinder side, which is changing to use NVMe as a Python library. Sorry for the long rant, but for those that will be viewing the code, I hope that it helps to at least understand why all this code, I'm trying to get all this code merged. And yep, questions on anything weird I said, questions on other topics related to NVMe-T or NVMe in general, you are welcome.
Okay, so I am particularly interested in the native NVMe multipathing because that's something which I need for the storage which we are developing at OVH based on the NVMe protocol. So I can help you with testing of those changes. And what? So I'm doing development of my own Cinder driver for the storage which we do, and that storage driver will use the NVMe connector. At least that works on the Stein version on my side because we are still on Stein. But I hope to have this native multipathing merged and then backported to Stein, or we upgrade during that time. I don't know. We'll see. But also one of my concern is I'm not sure if that's a case for the generic connector. It's about updating the paths in the connector because, for example, I'm not sure, but from what I heard, the Kioxia driver and the Lightbits connector, they do a similar thing during using their agent. But just to explain you, we are building a storage when you can replace a data path using a different host, for example, and all the synchronization of the data is done on the backend side. So the only thing the client has to do is to replace a path once it's ready. This is a mechanism to fix a dead host which you cannot bring to be alive, and things like that. And also because we are managing Ceph on our side, and it's particularly useful to have a mechanism which allows you to bring down a host, move the data around, and then restore all the paths. And Ceph does that by its libraries. But I'm just thinking if such functionality would be possible with the NVMe over Fabrics client, and if it's something which would be interesting from other companies, from other users. What do you think?
I just wrote. I don't know if you see in the Etherpad the Kioxia code. Right now it's merge conflict, and I don't know if they will be working on it or if they are waiting for the multipathing to merge before spending more time on this. But I think that the original idea that was proposed back in the blueprint, the agent thing, was to make it generic, so that others like yourself could benefit from precisely that feature. Because as SDS usually would benefit from this, like you say, Ceph does it because it has their libraries and automatically detects it. So the idea here was to add a lot of the code into the, well, not a lot of the code, but the logic to call the specific engine, at least in OS break, so that it can work. And I admit I haven't looked at the code and how it works, but I think that is what you are looking for, that is specific. So this has already been discussed and being considered as something that we want, that it's reasonable to have in the code, and it's a nice to have feature. So I would recommend you to look at that specific patch, see what it does, and see if it provides everything that you're looking for, or if functionality wise you think that there's something missing,
As far as I understand, there's one thing which is missing, which is concerning when we do such approach, because there's nothing which updates the data in Cinder database about the attachment, and that's about concern. That's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there was a presentation a while back on the proposal, which is not great, let's say. I think it was, I don't know if it was that they would talk with their backend or they would talk to Cinder. I don't recall. Because in general, what we didn't, as a project, we didn't deem appropriate. We didn't want to do it. I don't remember exactly. But adding code in Nova that would have credentials to call Cinder for any user. Because you have to understand, at the OS brick level, we don't know anything about users. We don't know the context that request. So if I need to replace something in a connector that Cinder has, I need to have access to Cinder. And if I don't know which user is, I need administrator access to be able to touch things for anybody. And that's where it's a bit troublesome.
It's the tricky part.
Exactly.
I had another idea. What if on Cinder side we had a periodic task which, let's say, each hour would fetch the information from the Cinder backend, let's say the cluster, and get the information about the updated paths. If some of the paths gets updated, then it notifies the Nova about the new connections, and then the OSBrick may update the data paths. I know it's not implemented. There are no code for that. There's no code for that, but from high point perspective, this looks reasonable.
Okay, I see. Yep, that could work. It would need new code, like you say, but that could potentially, it's non-trivial. I'm going to say why now, but from a high level, I think that's reasonable. That the backend makes a notification to Cinder. Cinder relies with a new asynchronous message mechanism that they have so that it can update. That seems, at least at first look. There are cases where it's going to get tricky. For example, you're in the middle of a live migration and you can be disconnecting things in both places and stuff like that. But otherwise, for me, that may work. Something on those lines, let's say, of getting some new information, updating the connection information in Cinder, notifying the Nova side so that it can update. I don't know if they are going to like it, and I don't know about other developers, what they think, but I don't think it's that crazy.
So in that case, you can safely update the Cinder database about the new attachment info.
Yep, exactly.
How does it currently work for Ceph? For example, if you know how Ceph works, if you change a monitor IP, then it's not propagated, right? Because when you attach a volume which is in Ceph, then what's in the connection info? Are these monitor IPs or?
Look, basically, the way it works is you have the cinder.com file everywhere. And that's where you got the information. So if every single monitor that you have in your not cinder.com, sorry, your ceph.com file, the appropriate file on each of the system, if all the monitors are broken there, are dead, you will not connect.
Okay, so it's something else's responsibility to update the configuration.
Yep, it's all that stuff is off band, and Cinder doesn't present,
Okay.
doesn't
In our
send out.
case, in our case, I believe it's Puppet who's updating the configurations, but okay.
Could be. So the original idea of this connection agent was to do it off band as well. But like you say, yeah, you can do it off band, but then you don't have the connection info in Cinder match reality. Yep. Because so this agent, for example, could talk to the backend, ensure that there is a new. So it detects a path that is set. It's go to the backend directly, not to Cinder, not to the driver. Backend directly, ask for a new replica, a new path, changes the path, and now it's live and it's working. But it doesn't. The Cinder connection info doesn't get updated.
Yeah,
That's true.
That's what I understand. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I don't have any more questions right now. The developments on my side are very early, so I'll still have many things to learn about the drivers and the OSBrick code. So I will probably be catching you on IRTS, if you don't mind. So
I don't mind.
thanks.
Probably we can look with Kioxia if they are still working on the connection agent, and maybe can discuss. We can have another discussion on this to see if they prefer this approach. We're going to have two approaches. I don't know.
All right, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. Good talk.
Okay, so yeah, sorry to interrupt. We will soon be meeting with Nova. Like they'll probably join us. I haven't got an update from them.
Okay, bathroom break for 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, we can take a break. And for this topic, I think the action item Gurk has already proposed a bunch of patches. So the action item would be to take a look and review those patches.
Yeah, and I think another action item is discuss with Kioxia and other drivers, SDS drivers, about the agent possibilities of doing it this other way.
The healing agent, if I remember correctly, okay. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, so we can take a quick break and we can return when the Nova team joins us.
Sounds good. All right.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I have to go. Bye-bye.